I'm standing in front of what people think of rightly, I think, as the great masterpiece of van der Weyden, The Descent from the Cross, which of course is in the permanent collection here. Now, The Descent from the Cross shows that van der Weyden had achieved a complete mastery of representing reality. And it's a perfectly convincing representation of the Descent from the Cross. There are lots and lots of tiny details. The man in the cloth of gold robe, for example, if you look very closely, his robe could be closed with a hook and an eye. In fact, he's left his robe open. The Magdalene on the right is making an extremely violent gesture, and you can see she's putting a tremendous strain on the stitches in her seam. And that's, I think, very, very interesting and compelling, and makes you believe totally in this picture as a representation of the Descent from the Cross. However, as you look at it, you realize that there's only a minimal, rudimentary strip of landscape at the bottom of the picture, and that the figures are actually enclosed in a gold box, which is a little bit odd. And then you begin to wonder whether these figures are real human figures or whether they're sculpture. Then you begin to wonder about how they're placed in the box, because if you look at the rearmost figure of the servant who's climbing on the ladder, his hand is coming through past the fictive painted frame which surrounds this picture. It's coming forward with these two huge, vicious, bloody nails, which he's just removed, presumably from Christ's hands. And the nails are coming out of the picture, and they're overlapping the fictive frame. Well, he's the rearmost figure in the composition, and in front of him is the cross. The cross hasn't got enough breadth to ever to have supported the figure of Christ. It doesn't work, and the picture is full of anomalies and strangenesses. And if you look at the bottom of the cross, the ladder seems to be twisted from one plane into another, and all the junctions of the planes are carefully disguised by elongating the Virgin's leg enormously and using her foot to conceal that junction. And this is all very, very, very well considered and thought out, I think. Another thing that one doesn't immediately notice is that all these figures they look very, very, very graceful and balanced, and you can't really imagine them changing their poses very readily. But in fact, if you look at each pose, every single figure is about to fall down. They're all, the Magdalene especially, if you find her foot, she's crossing her legs and she's on the way down. Her mantle's falling off, she's falling down, she's going to slide down the box, and she's going to land on the landscape. Then another thing about them is that they're all very strangely dressed, and contemporaries would have understood that. And I think they would have seen that the Magdalene, for example, has not put her dress on today, that she has run out in an agony of despair and haste, and she's wearing an underdress, very tightly fitting, and she's thrown a mantle round her shoulders. It's now falling off. She's just not properly, decorously dressed. The cloth of gold man hasn't bothered to fasten all the fastenings, any of the fastenings, I don't think, of his robe. And there are other strange anomalies. His hat, he seems to have just pushed rather casually back, and his hair is rather messy if you look carefully. So that there is this rather sort of strange contradiction there also between decorum and almost a lack of proper decency in the clothes. And you can take every figure and consider them all from these different respects. The statuesqueness, the immutability apparent, but the real instability. And there are so many contradictions. And this is, I think, one of the secrets of van der Weyden's great art, that his paintings are instantly recognizable. They're instantly impressive. They look immutably beautiful. His command of geometry and pattern is such that you can't really bear to think that they could be altered. Yet, when you look again, and then come back again, and come back again, and again, and again, there's always something new to observe, some anomaly, some ambivalence. And I think that that really means that this continuous assessment that must go on. I've been looking at this picture for many, many decades now in reproductions and the original, but yesterday one of our colleagues here in the Prado pointed out a detail which I'd never ever seen before, and that there is a little blood stain on the cloth of gold robe of Joseph Arimathea. I can point that out, but I would have to leave the camera to do that, so I won't. But I think this is a summation, as far as I can, a definition of the greatness of the art of van der Weyden, that this instant attraction and yet this compulsion to return and return and return and really try to understand all the ambiguities. And it's like reading a great book again and again and again, or a great play.